things change rapidly in the NBA. By tomorrow, Giannis could be traded, and the whole landscape of the league could be changed. What's the most likely scenario for the Brooklyn Nets?
So for the Nets, not like league wide.
But
Okay.
now I'm going to ask you league-wise because you mentioned that now.
Okay.
But Nets
Sure.
first.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad because I've been sitting on something for a while, but I'll start with the
Ooh.
Nets.
Gets it off in time. And he's got it, baby! Big time Nets win.
The only Net fans you know? The only Nets fans you know? Man. I mean, come on, man. Or are these guys?
Welcome back to Only Net Fans You Know podcast. I'm Peter. Welcome to episode number 94. I have a special guest today, a returning guest. You know him from Netsdaily lore. You know him with his podcast with Anthony Puccio, the Brooklyn Pod. Welcome back to the show, Collin Helwig. How's it going, bro?
I'm good, man. We got this little break in between here. It feels like a little bit like a winter, like an all-star break or something like that. But, I'm doing well. I've been going to all the home games so far this year, covering the team. Jordi's been great. It's been, I think, a lot more fun to cover, even with the whole should we tank, should we not tank situation with, a new coach that the players seem to have really bought into. There's not a whole lot of that in the league today. So vibes are good, man. How are you doing?
Good, man. We got a lot to discuss, so I'm just going to jump straight into it. The last time I talked to you was all the way back in August. You kind of gave me what you thought about the season upcoming. Now we're, a good quarter in. What's the energy like in the locker room? The players obviously bought in. We saw all this talk from media day that they thought they were going to be better than we expected. They are. Tell me about all that. And has Cam Thomas's injury affected the locker room at all?
Yeah, I think the guys definitely miss him out there. I believe it was Claxton was talking to us after whatever the last game was, and he mentioned that because Claxton hadn't been looking too hot for a couple games, but really seemed to find his groove in his last two games. And he mentioned CT is one of the guys who kind of gets him to his spot. So I think they miss him, obviously, from an on-court perspective, like in terms of that scoring that he provides, but then also, with that scoring he draws in the defense, he makes it easier for other guys. So he's definitely missed out there, but he also seemed to be in good spirits the other day when we talked to him. He's never had a hamstring injury before, which I thought was kind of interesting. So he was pretty genuine about it. He was like, "Oh, I don't really know because like I've never done this before." You know what I mean? So, but he seemed to be in a positive light. So, looking forward to getting him back. In terms of the team, though, these Jordi, the players, these guys just do not give an inch when it comes to tanking for like just to put it out there. I feel like the fans are all like, "Oh, should we win this game? Should we lose this game?" I know the players get asked questions a lot of time, like Cam Johnson especially. How would your name is floating around is trade market stuff. Same with Dorian Finney-Smith, and they just, with everything that they say, is we want to win every game, talking like they want to be a playoff team, and no coach or player is going to go up and say, "Yeah, we're not going to win anything. You should trade me." And Jordi's not going to go, "Yeah, we got to lose. We got to get Cooper Flag." And no one's going to do that. But I'm impressed at the level at which he still says, especially Jordi, "No, we're going for it. We want to win." He said something the other day after, help me out here. Who was the last? I was at the Indiana game, and then I was at Milwaukee. Sorry. Yeah, we were sitting there, and someone asked Jordi just kind of like what happened, and he talked about the defense, and then he got to a point where he was like, "Yeah, if you're not going to play hard defense, then you're not the type of guy who should be wearing a Brooklyn Net jersey." And I was like, damn, like I wasn't surprised by it because I think that's everything in his character has been that way so far. But it's interesting to hear how strong they are in terms of their message that they are going to compete, despite what everyone on the outside is saying.
Okay. Training camp, there was a couple incidences where you saw Jordi kind of being a little rougher on players. Has he kept up that intensity the entire season? Has he loosened up a little bit? Well, what do you think about it? I know you just said that they haven't given an inch, quote unquote. How is the intensity?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely still up. We asked Claxton after the game about that quote, about that Jordi quote, where he said, "Yeah, these guys need to be better. Like, you don't belong here," more or less. And I believe Lucas asked Claxton, like, "How do you feel about that?" I think it was Claxton. It could have been someone else, but I'm 90% sure it was Claxton. And he said, "Honestly, that's like a good thing. Like, you want a coach who like holds you accountable." So I think not only is he keeping it up, but the players are buying into it. He's being heard. Dennis has talked about it in previous instances too about being coached hard and like why that's a good thing. And it's good to see. There's the Nets are no stranger to locker turmoil, and I don't know whether it was coaches' faults or players being too sensitive in years past, but where it felt like maybe things like that weren't allowed to be said in years past, and they're allowed to be said now, and they're received in the right way. It's good criticism. It's constructive criticism. I think he's definitely kept it up. You see it in every game he coaches. He coaches to win. He's challenging plays when the Nets are up like 12 with like 2 minutes left in the game, crap like that. Like he's been every bit the part, I guess, compared to how we thought it was going into the beginning of the year and how tough he would be.
That's interesting. Now, I got to ask this question. You mentioned it before, tank versus non-tank. Obviously, the front office, I don't think they would trade the draft picks that they traded to Houston if they were planning to compete.
Yes.
So, I know it's unspoken. Let's be honest here. Marks wants them to lose. Jordi wants them to win. How is the balance of that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten the chance to talk to Sean at all this year. I haven't seen him at the Clays at all. But so just in terms of the players and the coaches, yeah, there's been, like I said, there's really been zero signs of like, not even like, sometimes you can even find like a smidget of like a coach saying like, oh, we'll see. But no, it is, we're playing to win. We're going out to win. We're going to do everything we can to win. So in terms of the balance, from what I've seen from the players and the coaches, again, it is all, we need to win. We're not tanking. But Cam Johnson even said, this was after the Indiana game. Oh, we read everything like that the media has been saying, like how low the expectations are. And he said something along the lines of like, that kind of like perked us up. We want to like prove all those people wrong, which I think is, if you've been a competitive athlete at any stage of your life, that's something that's like totally understandable. Where it's going to get interesting is when we get to the later point of the year. I've been saying this since October. It's December now, so that track has now gotten shorter, but I do believe there's still enough time where they can win and establish this culture. And, Jordi's a good coach, build up that locker room repertoire, all that stuff. That's important. And then, all of a sudden we're starting Jalen Wilson instead of Cam Johnson, things like that are like a subtle tank to get yourself back in position. I'm not going to sit here and act like they should win every game and like it's not important to get a good draft pick. It is 100% important to get a good draft pick. I think it's been a little bit concerning how, like, I'm going to go off pace here a little bit, but I had no expectations that the Washington Wizards would be this freaking horrible. I think if the Wizards had more than like 3 wins, then everyone would be feeling a little bit better now. Now there's 3 guys that everyone's looking at. They're going to be good. So maybe the Wizards get one of them and the next 2 are up for grabs. But I think a lot of the pressure that the fan base is feeling is because of how teams like Washington just absolute like ass, for lack of a better word. And, like Scotty Barnes just tweaked his ankle. That's rough too. The Raptors are worse than I thought they'd be too.
Charlotte also. I really thought Charlotte would be a little bit better. I'm surprised at how weak the East is. And I'm happy you brought all this up because I'm going to start going into trade season now. Very interesting. The last couple of weeks, Evan Sideri's putting out tweets. Nets have a good market for Dorian Finney-Smith and Cam Johnson. Then I think like a day or two later or later in the week, Michael Scotto kind of pours water on it that maybe the Nets are probably going to only get like second rounders for these guys. Sideri thinks the Nets are going to get first rounders. And then just this week, we have Shams talking. Nets are doing exploratory talks. I think Brian Windhorst was on ESPN saying,
on the GM the other day, I said, who's the best player you think gets traded before the deadline? The answer that he came to after thinking about it for a little bit was Cam Johnson. Just again, because it's
I don't think he'll get traded. I don't think he will get traded because how much money he's got in his contract.
Point being, like, it wasn't Jimmy Butler. It wasn't
all this stuff coming out in a whirlwind. Obviously, December 15th is the date everybody has circled on the calendar when players that were signed earlier in the offseason can now be traded. Makes it easier to make deals, matching up contracts. What's the latest trade rumors, and who should people be looking at with all this information being thrown around?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do is look at the Nets' history. And it's a little bit tough because Dennis Schroeder is playing like an all-star right now. And last year, Spencer Dinwiddie was playing like someone who wanted to be anywhere other than Brooklyn, like at this point in the year. But Royce O'Neal was having a good year last year. Solid. But his deal was expiring. Like, unless the Nets want to and think they can extend Dennis Schroeder, like maybe they want him to be like the veteran for like the next future young team or something. That's another conversation. But if that contract is going to expire, it makes sense to trade him so you don't lose him for nothing. And I think the Nets know that. So it makes a lot more sense for them to offload. I think Dorian's going to opt out of his deal. That's not something I've been told. That's just something I'm guessing. Guys like him.
I've heard that. I heard the same exact thing. So you're spot on.
So it makes sense to offload those guys. Whereas Cam, there's much less pressure, much like it was last year. There wasn't as much. Now Cam has more years on his contract than Doe did last year, regardless. But it's the opportunity is not the right word. The bad opportunity, potential opportunity of losing someone for nothing is not there for Cam Johnson. So I don't think that if they're going to trade guys, it would be Doe and Dennis. That's how it feels, at least in my perspective. I haven't heard too much though. Like I still think it's early. I do think as fans, we kind of look at that date, December 15th, and circle it because front offices can't really do anything at this point. So we look at it as like, oh, are we going to see fireworks that day? And it doesn't always happen. And I think in terms of what you're hearing about first round picks, second round picks, what tells me is that the first round pick people are hearing from the Nets and Sean, because that's obviously more so, hey, you want to put that out there. We want to drive the price up and this is great. And then the second round pick stuff is probably the other front offices who are like, nah, you're not getting that much. Like come to us with a second round pick because they obviously want a better deal. Different guys have different earpieces everywhere. I think Dennis is where the first rounder right now. It's hard to not say that with the way that he's playing.
Even as a rental though? Even just knowing that you're going to probably lose him at the end of the year, most likely, if you don't want to go like into a tax. Because let's face it, if a team that's trying to win, they're probably a tax team. They're probably a first or second apron team or whatnot, right? So are you really going to go over the top? Because I can make an argument. Most people can make an argument. Dennis Schroeder, great numbers and stuff. I just think those numbers are a little inflated because of the team that he's on. You put him on a team like Denver, he doesn't get the minutes, and I don't know if he gets the same production. That's why I'm a little surprised to hear you say that.
I mean, he's also giving me no inch with his game. I'm just waiting for that stretch for him to like stop playing like an all-star, and it's not coming. You know what I mean? And I do think even if you want to look at it from a salary perspective, his deal is expiring. The Nets don't want to take back salary. I know that for a fact. That's been widely reported too. But maybe if you can find a way where some team wants to get off, maybe the Nets find a guy who they are willing to take some long-term salary. Maybe he's young enough. I can't think of an example right now, but that could make Schroeder more enticing where it's like, hey, we can get this guy. He's playing great. We get him for a year. And it's a way to get out of some of the cap constellation or whatever, like get out of a bad contract. Again, the Nets aren't going to take a horrendous contract. They are stoked to have so much cap space next summer and beyond. They're not going to jeopardize that to get another first round pick. But that's another avenue where if the money's right, I could see it happening.
I think the Warriors match up very well. I've been starting to do a little research on other teams' rosters. They have a couple bigger contracts that are expiring. Like I think Kevin Looney is one of them. They have a couple guys that you could mix and match. And DeAndre Melton's been talked about. He's obviously hurt. It would just be for a contract filler. And could you see a deal in which maybe Dorian Finney-Smith and Schroeder are packaged together, or is that just wild?
No, I think I could definitely see that. I don't know. Maybe you're gonna need a third team to get all the more money allocation. I think the Nets would be happy to. I think the floor for all these guys is like 2-3 second round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith, for Dennis Schroeder, stuff like that, if they can't nab a first. And then I think all of a sudden you have 7 or 8 second round picks. I feel like the goal with something like that is like, how many of those can you package to get in a first? Like, I don't want to devalue second round picks, but there's only so many guys you can like have on your roster. And even if they are spread out a couple years, I think you want to, reuse, reduce, recycle with your assets, get a first rounder out of all those. So if you can do that now and, instead of send them both somewhere and get one first round pick, I think call it a day. Like, we'll take it. You're battling against where we could lose these guys for nothing at the end of the year. So you're going to take something, at least in my opinion. That's what they're going to do based on what we saw from the team last year at the trade deadline.
So I saw Brian Lewis write that Dorian Finney-Smith is one of the major leaders of the locker room. How do you think a Dorian Finney-Smith trade affects the locker room? You think there's someone that will easily just stand up and kind of take his spot, or is that something that's going to hurt them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll definitely hurt the locker room. I think any trade hurts the locker room. You're pulling a team apart. The Nets have often talked about how everyone likes each other. You know, like I don't think there's a lot like it's not like every locker room's a fucking madhouse, but you don't say that unless it's like true. You know what I mean? Like if it's kind of true, then you're like, oh no, like we're good together. If you say everyone likes each other, everyone likes each other. That's just my opinion. So taking him out is going to have some sort of a, you know, it's going to hurt the locker room definitely to a certain degree, but those are the things that, you know, you sacrifice when you're prioritizing the future instead of the present. The present is the team right now and the locker room, the leaders and for the locker room for this season that no one seems to know what they want to do with it right now. But everything else with going back to where they traded to get their picks back and, you know, traded your quote unquote like franchise cornerstone for even more pictures. Like it's the Nets front office has prioritized the future over the present. So even though trading Dorian Finney-Smith for a first round pick, it's going to fall into that same thing where you're prioritizing the future over the present. That's kind of what you signed up for when you traded McHale, got your picks back and whatnot. So it's kind of just something you got to take, I think, if you want to do.
You mentioned you don't think Cam Johnson's going to be moved at this before the deadline, right?
It's close. 60-40. My gut, it's all gut right now. My gut says no.
Mhm.
You know, he seems to like being there. I think they like having him there. I don't think they're going to trade him unless they get not a Mikal Bridges King's ransom, because I don't think you're ever going to get a deal as you got as good of a deal as you got for Mikal Bridges, but something along the lines of that. I think because he's under contract for a couple years, he's deserving of a first. I remember last time we talked about because of his contract also, depends on how you want to look on it. Like if it's too much, then maybe that reduces some value. He's a very interesting hypothetical. Playing out of his mind right now though. So that's definitely helpful.
The injury history and the contract concerns me. I love the way he's playing, but if you put him as maybe like a fourth option on a better team, does he have those numbers? Last year he was hurt. I think that was a fluke, right? I think he was better than last year, but I don't know if what he's doing right now is truly him or not. I can't tell.
Yeah, I mean his numbers are definitely gonna go down if his usage rate goes down. Like say they trade him to the Nuggets, he's not going to be flashing those skills down in the post, creating his own shot like he's shown this year. Like you're just not going to run the offense through Cam Johnson where you have like Nikola Jokic or whatever, you know, stars on whatever contender trades for him. What it's going to come down to is his floor is just being like a run around the screens, catch and shoot the ball, and like a solid defender. So if he can maintain those things where it's like, on the Nets where it's like, okay, we trade for him now, he'll still be able to do those. The 3-point shot looks crisp right now. I feel like he's shooting it from deeper than he did before. Now, I don't think being like, oh, he's shooting it from the logo is going to be a reason a GM like wants to trade for him more. Like it's cool for us to watch as fans, but nonetheless, the shot's been there all year. The defense has been solid, all things considered. I think he's doing the right things where yes, take the stuff away that he's doing right now on the Nets as like a 1 or a 2 option, but it's enough where, hey, we vault him into a 5. It's still going to stick. It's still going to be there. So I think that's important.
What do you think about Day'Ron? Does he go? He's going to either be traded or are they going to give him the qualifying offer?
I think they'll give him a qualifying offer. I think Day'Ron and Cam Thomas because it's difficult to gauge their markets. I'll stick with Day'Ron though. Like, thank you for restricted free agency, like being a thing, because you're going to let the market tell you how much value he is. Now, I don't think anyone's going to value Day'Ron more than the Brooklyn Nets right now because they've been around him. They've seen up front like his flashes. I don't think, and credit to you if you're some scout on like the Chicago Bulls or something and you see something about Day'Ron that's like this guy could be like a future star. But I don't think that's going to happen. You know, like I think that the Nets will give him a qualifying offer. I think that'll take it. It's going to be kind of like a similar thing where it's like, hey, we like you, but like you've been hurt, so we'll give you another contract. Let's see how the next couple of years go. And he's going to say, yeah, like I've been hurt. My market probably isn't too hot. You guys have been good to me. I'm going to stick around. So I think he's he'll be here for another couple years. Shooting the three now, so you never know how that might work out either. He's been practicing them. I've seen him. He practices them before every game. Now he's starting to pull them in games, so that's dope.
If you remember last year, towards the end of the year, he was hitting a couple threes, and that caught my eye. I said, if this dude rebounds the way that he rebounds and can hit the three at like a 34% clip, ooh, he's a big boy. He's a big dude. Like I think there's value in that. And I do hope that they do keep him. I would be kind of upset to see him being traded just for like a second round pick when you've put all this time in. You invested all this time in him. Like I like to see that play out. We'll see how that goes. I have an episode coming up with Cypher from Nets Kingdom. As you can see the logo on the bottom, I've joined Nets Kingdom. That's the new home team.
Oh, nice.
We're going to talk about the Cam Thomas trade, possible trades next episode. So I'm going to put a little stamp on that for now. Last trade question. What is the most likely scenario you see happening? This is just Collin, just spitballing. We're not going to hold you to it. Things change rapidly in the NBA. By tomorrow, Giannis could be traded, and the whole landscape of the league could be, changed. What's the most likely scenario for the Brooklyn Nets?
So for the Nets, not like league-wide?
Just for the Nets. Okay. But now I'm going to ask you league-wise because you mentioned that now.
Okay,
but Nets
sure,
first.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad because I've been sitting on something for a while. But I'll start with the Nets. Just most likely thing that I think will happen.
Yeah.
Dorian Finney-Smith gets traded for like 3 second-round picks. I think it'll be like, personally, I think Royce O'Neal was worth more than like a handful of second-rounders and Keita Bates-Diop last year, but that's what they got for him, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. That is, just, again, like I'm basing so much off last year because obviously the Nets are in a better position now. They have a future. They didn't really have much of a future last year. But in terms of winning and the veterans who are on expiring contracts who you thought maybe would be here for if we were going to retool instead of rebuild with McHale, now we're totally rebuilding. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them. So I think they trade Dorian just because, Dennis is playing so well right now. I got a feeling that I wouldn't be totally shocked if they signed Dennis to like a 3-year deal, like at this summer, something like that, because I feel like he embodies so much of what Jordi Fernandez and the fans want a Brooklyn Net to be, where he's gritty and he plays super hard and everyone's like, oh, he's older. He doesn't give a shit. He's going to go out there and he's going to hit a step back on Kevin Durant and then like smile on his face and do the thing like that. He's diving like the last game, diving on the floor, like sprinting away from Giannis. Jared Dudley's not a good example because he's way better than Jared Dudley was for the 2019 Nets. But I could see them pointing to him and being like, let's re-sign you, keep as long as it's a team-friendly deal. They have all this cap space and say, hey, let's have you be our guy to be our veteran for this like young team. So bit of a 2-answer thing there. But yeah, that's what I foresee.
Does that cover the NBA landscape also?
I don't have my calculator out with me right now, but I've long thought that Zach LaVine, everyone's been talking about how bad his contract is for so long that they forgot that he's actually like a pretty good basketball player too. I think he is a very similar player to Michael Porter Jr., who is still on the younger side, and the Bulls probably want to get younger. They want to rebuild. The Nuggets are in win now. You want to maximize Jokic's window. I don't know if it's totally possible. I would like to see some sort of a Michael Porter Jr. for Zach LaVine deal. I think it's a seamless fit. Like Michael Porter Jr.'s role is something that Zach LaVine can do in that Denver offense probably better, honestly, with catch and shoot and pick and pop and, being that athletic wing. The Nuggets are good, but I don't think they're like, it's like, hey, the Mavericks, the Thunder, the kids are here. You know what I mean? You need some something to reload with. That is I'll call it Zach LaVine's an all-star, so I'll call it a blockbuster that I think is a dark horse thing that I think could happen.
That's very interesting, and it does make sense. It definitely makes sense. Okay, trade deadline passes. What did the Nets look like post trade deadline?
I know I said I could see Dennis being back next year, and them waiting it out and re-signing him, and I could, but I think it's probably more likely that they do trade him. So if I'm going to look at it from like a starting 5 perspective, I think the guys left over will be Cam, starting 5 would be like Cam, Jalen Wilson, CJ, Clowney, Claxton is what it feels like to me. Dayron is like if I'm gonna bet, I'm gonna bet that Dayron and Dennis get traded because their contracts are donezo after this year. So I think those are the guys who are just kind of like left over. They like Jalen Wilson. Clowney's been pretty solid outside of that injury, or he's back, but he's not back. He came back, but he hasn't played yet. So I think he'll be in there. They definitely want to get him minutes. Shake Milton will be like your 6th man. You know, he's had some good burst the past couple games. I was a big Shake guy coming into the year, and he struggled to find minutes. But now that with the injuries to Cam and stuff, I think he's done enough to, you know, keep his minutes even when Cam comes back. So I think that's what the team will look like. You'll probably call Derek up. You know, he had that great game shooting the ball. And, you know, they'll have to get something back to match those salaries too. So I don't know who that's going to be, but, you know, I still think that they will trade the vets at the end of the day, you know.
2 people that we have forgotten to talk about, Ben Simmons and Mr. Bogdanovich. Buyout candidates?
Definitely not Ben. It makes no sense. Why would you just like buy him out when you can wait? You know, like he's going to sell jerseys across the world for another like 3 months, even if you wait past like the trade deadline and you can't find a way to trade him. Bogdanovich, maybe I could see the Nets doing him that solid. You know, like he was on the team before. I don't think anyone like, even though it hasn't been said, I don't think like anyone, the fan, like you're right. We haven't talked about him because I literally forgot about him, and I spent every day thinking about the Brooklyn Nets. So I don't think anyone expects him to come back and play with this team. Now, Jordi Fernandez, being the 110% competitor that he is, maybe changes that and is like, hey, like, no, what do you mean? He's on the roster. Let's have him play. And then he plays, and, you know, who the hell knows what could happen. So I think Bogi's definitely more likely to get bought out. I don't think it will happen with Ben. You know, they've waited this long. You know, what's the point at this point? You know, if you're going to buy him out, you should have done it like a year ago or something like that. Now it's just like, all right out this year, it is what it is.
Even though I think he is very important to helping run the offense, and he does, you know, provide rebounding. And if you do trade Dennis, you're going to need someone to like play make a little bit. And even though I don't think Dennis is like a major playmaker, but you need a ball handler, right? So we'll have to see what happens. Big prediction, long way ahead. What happens with the Nets? Where do they finish? Where do you think they draft in this upcoming draft?
I mean, where they draft could be anything because they're a lottery. I think where they finish is, yeah. I mean, for some reason, 12 feels right to me. I don't think they're going to let themselves, like, I think if they actually, like, go to the playoffs after trading for their draft picks, like, people in the organization are going to be like, yo, like cool, but like, yo, like, so, I think but it's going to be hard for this team, seeing how they have been run and how competitive they are and how Jordi coaches them, for them to be a bottom 3 team in the East, in my opinion. Like, I think, let's look at the teams down there. Like the Sixers will not be that far down. Pistons are kind of sneaky this year. The Bulls are a dark horse team to maybe bottom out and beat the Nets in tanking or whatever. 12 just feels right to me. And in terms of the lottery, I think Lady Luck has been on a generational middle finger to the Brooklyn Nets run in the past 5 years. So I think they will land with the 4th pick with a bit of irony that says, like, you're not going to get any of the big 3 guys.
Towards the end of the year, I want to see these Nets start dropping in the standings. Jordi wants to win. Marks wants to lose. Does Mark say, Jordi, you know, you should probably be sitting CJ the last 15 games of the year? Or, you know, like, we should probably be giving them a little reduced playing time. Jordi being the competitor that he is, how does that go?
I mean,
how do you think it will go? Possibly.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I believe the hierarchy goes GM is above the coach. So are you going to tell your boss, no, I'm going to do what I want?
I won't be happy about it, though.
Yeah, and I don't think Jordi Fernandez is also a smart guy. I think he understands what's at stake here. I think you can maybe compromise both guys by saying Sean Marks is going to say, all right, CJ, we might want to shut CJ down. Like he's been playing so many minutes this year, like, and Sean Marks can say, here's like Jalen Wilson, and you take Jalen Wilson and Dariq Whitehead and Day'Ron Sharpe, and you go out and you play to win. You go for it. And if Jordi does it and he wins games with those guys, then like, F it. I just think that I have no sources on what their plans will be in terms. Like, I have no way of knowing that will happen or it won't happen. I just think in terms of finding a compromise between the two of them, that's the way to do it. That's how I would handle it if I were Sean Marks.
Good answer. And
you can say like Dariq Whitehead, we drafted him with first overall pick. We drafted him with a first round pick. We want him to be a part of this team's future. He needs some burn. Like, he's got to play him more, like things like that, where it's you're not losing games, but like you're limiting your firepower.
I think that's fair. That's fair. All right. Last question before we wrap up. I've asked you before about what your favorite Nets jersey is. Out of the stories that you can tell, do you have a memory or a story that you could share? Maybe like a funny moment behind the scenes that isn't giving away anything that would get you in trouble, or an interesting story that fans, maybe something you've seen in practice or anything like that you can share that won't get you in trouble or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't anything like too crazy, but I'll say that the walls between the press room where we like talk to the players and the coach after, and what is like the locker room are very thin, and it's very fun to hear when we go and we sit down and we're waiting for the players out. When the Nets win, like when Jordi got his first win, they had a big comeback win like 2 weeks ago. I forgot who it was against. You can hear like the shouting and the celebrating after they win games, and which is, like that's kind of like fun to hear. You know what I mean? Like, I don't recall hearing any of that when they won games last year. So, it's cool. I think this is a team that, despite all the tanking stuff, like talk nonsense, whatever you want to call it, they enjoy winning, and they celebrate. They celebrate their wins. So that's what I'll say. And you can hear it for sure.
Is this the most fun you're having covering a team this year, or could it be prior years?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't covered the team like as a credentialed like beat writer, except last year was my first full year. I did a little bit at the end of the year before that. So this year's definitely more fun than last year. I think the big 2021, even though they lost, that was like a fun year to watch them, because they were like, I'll say from a watching perspective, I think it's gonna be tough to beat that year. One, they were sick, all like LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, everyone, that was just like sick to see. So I won't say it tops that from a watching perspective, but for me, from a professional work perspective, yeah, this year's the most fun.
All right, Collin, let's get you some plugs in there.
Yeah, no, you can find me at Collin Helwig on Twitter, 2 L's in Collin, 1 in Helwig, and the Brooklyn Pod. We're on YouTube at the Brooklyn Pod, Twitter, or I guess it's X now, Instagram, and TikTok, and Spotify, and Apple Music. I think we got them all there. So yeah, come check us out.
All right, guys, you're watching me on YouTube right now. If you enjoyed the episode, consider subscribing, leaving a like. You can follow me at NetFansYouKnow on Twitter. Have a great day. Have a great night, and enjoy the holiday season. And let's go Nets. We're out.